Primetime Fantasy Football is brought to you by Next Level Radio. Head to nextlevelradioonline.com for past episodes of Primetime Fantasy Football and the Showcast, plus celebrity guest spotlight. Now on to this week's Primetime Fantasy Football.
People I never thought about associating with. I don't know what it is. Talk to me. Check it out. Hey, front of acres with a mansion on my land. Full jacuzzis and my neighbors can't stand the way I live. This old song fast. Ain't got your ladies and prime time is on.
Whoa, Dion. It's not that kind of prime time.
Yeah, man, it's Primetime Fantasy Football on Next Level Radio.
Well, alright.
Welcome into Week 6 episode of Primetime Fantasy Football, brought to you by Next Level Radio. I am one of your three hosts, Adam Gorey, joined by Epics with Steve Richards and Joe Webster. How you guys doing this evening?
What's going on?
I'm wonderful, thank you.
All right, so Steve and I gave you a little bonus podcast on Monday night where we broke down the waiver wire picks for you. So, if your league does late waivers, or if you're still not sure who to add, go ahead and listen to that podcast. Joe, unfortunately, was unable to join us. Before we get started, I want to remind you to check out our rankings, which should be up by Thursday night. NextLevelRadioOnline.com. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes. Just search for Primetime Fantasy Football and also search for Next Level Radio, two separate ones. Make sure you're subscribed to both. Follow us on Twitter at NXT Level Radio. You can follow myself at Adam Next Level, Steve at SRichards31, or Joe at JoeyWeb32. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Next Level Radio Online. And of course, like I said before, you can check out episodes of the Showcast and Primetime Fantasy Football both on iTunes and at nextlevelradioonline.com. Let's get right into things. We'll kick it off with high-low. All right, first up, we'll recap last week's high-low picks. I'll start off with mine. I had Delaney Walker last week. He had four catches on 4 targets for 47 yards. A weak 4.7 points, so that's a red. Plays the Jags this week. You guys looking for a bounce-back week against the Jags, as most people do? Joe, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think against the Jags, you got to assume that everybody who plays the Jags seems to do well. So I think a bounce-back week is in order for him.
Steve, you agree?
Yeah, Delaney Walker to me seems like a boomer bust type of guy, and which is a matchup thing. So the Jaguars are an awfully good matchup. So I think he could certainly have a bounce back this week.
Yeah, I think he's probably top 8. It's probably like a front end tight end 1 this week. Just because of the matchup. I think he's worked his way though, kind of quietly into that tight end 1 conversation weekly. Just because, I think, when you look at production-wise, right now he has the 5th highest among tight ends on the season, even with that 4.7 week. So, I think he's snuck his way, and as we mentioned before, after those top 2 or 3 guys, it's kind of a drop-off. So I think he's towards the top part of that drop-off. But let's move on to my second pick, Brandon Cooks. I gave myself a yellow here. He had 9 receptions on 11 targets for 56 yards, 2 rushes for 15 yards. In a standard league, that's 7.1, but I gave myself a yellow because in a PPR, it jumps up to 16, because that kind of stuck out to me that he had 9 catches. They're on a bye this week, so no need to talk about him. Let's go on to Steve's last week's recaps.
Yeah, Steve happened to have the only green last week as far as the highs go. So I had Ben Tate to start. He only scored 12.1 points, but the reason it was a high was because that's all running yards. He didn't have a touchdown, but he had 22 carries for 123 yards. He also had a catch, if you want to call it added. He had 1 catch for -2 yards, so he actually hurt himself. But this week he comes up against the Steelers. So where are you guys sitting on Ben Tate's value? I guess as a whole, he seemed to come on strong right out of the gate, coming off an injury last week. So you guys think he can keep it up, or are you here for a regression?
Yeah, I think he can keep it up. I was really impressed with the way he ran, and right now the Steelers are not strong defensively. And I think one of the knocks on Ben Tate since he's come into the league is, obviously he was a backup for a while, but then even when he was backing up Foster, he had some injury issues. So I think if you're a Ben Tate owner, you ride him as long as you can because unfortunately it may only be a matter of time before he has another injury. So hopefully you have Coel or West on your bench as well if you're rolling with Tate. But I'd keep him in your lineup this week if you have him.
Yeah, I'm okay with starting him this week. I mean, the Steelers are actually decent against the run fantasy-wise, 11th least points to running backs. But I think they have a good run. I've said this last week. I think they have a good run-blocking offensive line. So, yeah, I have no problem. I would say he's probably a high running back 2 this week, I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe just outside
and
my
not
top
only
12.
that, and not only that, all of the injuries that are happening, and then you've got some big guys like Jamal Charles on a bye. I think it'd be hard to believe if you own Ben Tate and he's not somebody you have to start this week.
Yeah, I think you're certainly running him out. I would agree.
Yeah.
And then I also went red on Keenan Allen. I thought he was going to perform better against Jacksonville, and he didn't. He only had 3 catches, 7 targets for 25 yards. Didn't do anything else for a total of 2.5 points. So not much to show for there, despite Phillip Rivers' good day. This week he goes up against the Raiders. So Adam, we'll start with you. And where do you at as far as Keenan Allen this week in Oakland? I believe they are.
If I can afford to, I at this point I have to hit the bench button for now, just until I see him do something. I mean, he hasn't done anything at all this year, and I know if you draft him, you probably drafted him, as your second wide receiver. Hopefully you didn't draft him as your first. I kind of think, depending matchup wise, the Titans have the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. I'd be very tempted to slide in Justin Hunter and or Kendall Wright, ahead of a guy like Keenan Allen. I just don't think. I mean, Rivers is slinging it around, but that's the thing. He's slinging it to a lot of different guys, and it doesn't seem to be Keenan Allen so far this year. So I'm kind of worried if I'm a Keenan Allen owner.
I am a Keenan Allen owner in our keeper league that the 3 of us play in, and unfortunately, because of buys and maybe just not having as good of a bench as I thought I originally had, I have to keep him in the lineup this weekend. However, I agree with what Adam just said with lineups and everything like that. If I had the chance, I would bench him this week, but he is going to stay in my lineup. The only positive I will say is that it looks like Malcolm Floyd may be out, and Keenan Allen had a lot of his success last year when Malcolm Floyd was out. So he does have a good matchup against the Raiders. Since you probably drafted him as your number 2 wide receiver, this may be the week to say give him one more chance, and then you start looking at the guys like Wright and Hunter. So, but if you certainly want to bench him, I couldn't blame you because he has been awful this year.
Yeah, and I'm not exactly sure when it happened, but Keenan Allen tweaked his groin last week, so I'm not exactly sure if it happened early, and that's why he was held out and only ended up with 2.5 points. But he also had 7 targets, so he had plenty of opportunities. He just wasn't pulling them in. So
yeah, and he was limited.
Like you said, it might be time to drop him out. But if you have to play him, then yeah, Oakland is an okay matchup, and Phillip Rivers is certainly on point. So, Joe, we'll head over to you and where you were at with your column.
Yeah, I had my first one. We gave myself a yellow. I had Rashad Jennings and Andre Williams. I had talked about Rashad Jennings having a great matchup. He actually looked good before he got hurt. He was averaging 5.5 yards a carry, had 2 receptions, but then he got hurt. And then I mentioned Andre Williams. I just thought because of the matchup would have a chance to maybe play some garbage time towards the end. So I thought he could be a good flex matchup. And he ended up getting 20 carries, 65 yards for a touchdown, and actually putting up decent numbers. But the goal is that I thought both of them would hit. And because only one really hit, I got the yellow on that. So, but Andre Williams, Rashad Jennings right now, he's reported to be out a couple weeks with this MCL sprain. But I think Andre Williams has a really good matchup this week, and I'll talk about him a little later in our daily fantasy football or team of the week, I should call it. I think Andre Williams against Philadelphia could be a really good matchup for the rookie. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I like Andre Williams. Obviously, Rashad Jennings is irrelevant for this week at least. But I think Andre Williams is big enough. We talked about him a little bit on our supplemental podcast that we did on Monday, I'll call it. I think he has the ability to carry the load.
Bonus
he's
podcast.
Big enough to be able to do it. Yeah, the bonus. Yeah, I think he has the ability to carry the load for sure. And he's big enough, he's strong enough, and hopefully if you had Rashad Jennings, you got Andre Williams somehow, because you're in okay shape, especially against the Eagles on Sunday night. So.
Yeah, I agree.
What about you, Adam?
Yeah, I agree. The only thing that worried me here, he had 20 carries for 65 yards, which is not a great average. It's an okay average. I do think he has better success against the Eagles, but I don't think he'll get 20 carries. I think actually Eli Manning has a pretty good game. I think they sling it around a little bit. They always seem to attack those Eagles corners when they play against them. So I do think Andre Williams has still a good game, probably a touchdown. Maybe like 60 to 80 yards, but probably on less carries. But, if you're getting 60 to 80 yards, you're probably not worried about the carries. So, yeah, definitely a good matchup for sure.
Right. And then the other one, we gave myself a red because if you listened to the podcast last week, I guaranteed that Julius. Yeah, I think we all do. When we pick these highs and lows, we try not to pick the obvious guys every week. But when I went and looked at some stats and it had Julius Thomas against Arizona, who is really bad against all tight ends, I put Julius Thomas in there. I said, but, I'm going to put the caveat in there that he has to be the number one tight end of the week for it to be considered a green light. I got the red because he was second. He only had 2 touchdowns and 88 yards.
Long live Greg Olsen.
And Greg Olsen somehow sneaked ahead of him. So, Julius Thomas, if you listened, obviously you weren't benching him anyway, so I wasn't giving you any crazy fantasy knowledge, but I just thought that he was going to have an amazing week, and he did have a good week, but he was number 2 in the tight end rankings last week.
I would have gave you the green if he would have even gotten it in like a PPR, but he literally just came 6 yards shy. They both had 6 catches and 2 touchdowns. Olsen had 72 yards. Thomas had 66.
Right. That's all right. So this week against the Jets, I think personally, I think almost any wide receiver for Denver and tight end for Denver and quarterback for Denver, they're matchup proof. As long as they're not on a bye and
any
they're not
quarterback
injured,
for
you're putting
Denver?
them in your lineup. Any quarterback named Peyton Manning. You didn't let me finish.
Baby.
You didn't let me finish. Obviously the running backs we're also going to talk about a little later, but any of the other skill positions, they should be in their lineups every week.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's in for another.
Matchup proof anyway, but he also has great matchup against the Jets anyway. So
I was going to say.
He'll have a Mondo game.
Yeah, I think he's in for another big week. All right, so let's move on to our picks for this week. Number 1, I got Ruben Randall playing the Eagles, like I mentioned before. Eagles struggle with big receivers, or really any receivers for that matter. Odell, I think I put ODJ. It's OBJ. Odell Beckham Jr. Opens the field up
I like ODB. I like ODB better.
Yeah, okay, I think that one was taken. But yeah, OBJ opens the field up a little more for Ruben Randall too. Now that he's healthy, he's had double-digit targets in 3 straight games. So I think you see a little bit of dividends being paid. And I think I had Randall on my high list in like week 1 or 2, and he kind of hurt me there. So hopefully he makes up for that this week. But my second guy, I have Knowshon Moreno at home against the Packers. Supposed to be back this week. I think they're saying they're not sure how they're going to split carries, but they were saying that in week 1, and look what happened. So I think he's going to slide right back into that number 1 spot. Packers can be run on, as we have seen. Miami also has a really good offensive line. They get Pouncey back this week. So I think, potentially both of them can have decent numbers this week, as long as Miami can keep it kind of close. And, I think he gets the brunt of the carries. So, Joe, we'll start with you. What do you think about Ruben Randall and Knowshon Moreno?
Yeah, I like the Ruben Randall pick. I think there's a good chance that there's going to be at least one wide receiver from New York who has a really good game. And I always think back to the year, and I can't remember who the number 1 receiver is. Maybe you guys can help me, but I don't think it was Victor Cruz. When Victor Cruz had his coming out party against the Eagles on I believe it was a Sunday or a Monday night game.
Probably Hakeem Nicks.
It was. You're right. It was Nicks, and then Cruz really just burnt Asamoah all game, and so everybody knew Cruz then, and he took off from there. And I think that either Odell Beckham or Ruben Randall could be that same kind of guy this weekend. So I do like your Ruben Randall pick. Knowshon, I'm not so sure about. I'd like to see how his status is with practice all week. I don't know if because Lamar Miller has had some success in his absence. I'm wondering if they may just want to kind of ease him back into the mix. Clearly, if they give him the full load, I agree with your assessment, but I'm not so sure they're going to give him that full load. So it may be more, like you said, like a 50-50, or maybe even Lamar Miller gets a few more carries.
Yeah, I'm gonna pretty much agree with everything that Joe said. I like the Randall pick. He's big, he's tall, and the Eagles cornerbacks can't find the football. So if they just throw it up in the air, Ruben Randall's going to be able to play a little basketball, and he's going to win most times. I think he's in for a big game. He's also the most talented receiver they have, despite what people think about Odell Beckham. I think Ruben Randall has more raw talent than Odell Beckham, and I think he's just their best receiver. So he's in line for a pretty big game, I think, especially with the way the Eagles are defending the pass at this moment. I am not in at all as far as opposites go on Knowshon Moreno.
Well,
I've never been all that high on him.
Yeah, you're a Moreno hater.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Lamar Miller has looked good, and I also think that the Dolphins have thought Lamar Miller had looked good from the work that he's gotten. So I think hold off on Knowshon Moreno just yet, and I think if you have Lamar Miller, don't hesitate to run him out there. And then as far as my highs go, I'm going to start with Joe Flacco, believe it or not. I'm just going to take a shot on this one and call him a low-end quarterback one. So I just think that he has a chance here against Tampa Bay this week to be a low-end quarterback one. Obviously, if you have a guy that you're confident in starting, don't start Joe Flacco. But if you're in between and you don't really like your backup, if you got Breeze and he's on a bye or somebody like that, and you don't have a backup, I think Joe Flacco could be somebody to take a shot on. And then if he ends up hitting, then I look really smart, but he probably won't. So, but I have him as a low-end quarterback one this week. I actually have him ranked 12th, I think, in my quarterback rankings that we do. And then my second one is somebody I'm a little bit more confident in is Golden Tate. If you haven't taken notice yet on Golden Tate, do it now. He's really hot with Calvin Johnson essentially being a decoy for the last 2 weeks. Golden Tate has really taken into the role, and he's really taken the number one receiver role and run with it. Minnesota's not that good against the pass, and the Lions had a terrible loss last week. They're going to be really desperate for a win, and Golden Tate's a competitor. He'll feed into that kind of thing. I'm high enough on him. I'm going to ask you guys this question: do you consider Golden Tate a wide receiver one this week going into Week 6 against at Minnesota?
I do think Golden Tate is a wide receiver one this weekend. I think. I think it's a long shot that Calvin Johnson plays, and even if he does, I don't think he's going to be able to do much. So if the Detroit Lions have any passing game at all, I think really Golden Tate's going to be the guy that's going to get at least the most looks and the most action. So I think Golden Tate is in for a big week.
Yeah, I would agree there. And Calvin Johnson could play, but even if he does play, he's probably just going to be a decoy again. So yeah, I agree with Golden Tate there.
Cool. Yeah, and Steve, it's funny. When you put the Joe Flacco out there, I thought, man, that is a really bold pick. But I went and looked back to see what the Tampa Bay defense has given up passing so far this season, and I think the lowest amount of yards passing was Week 1 to Derek Anderson at 230. Mm-hmm. Week 2, Austin Davis had 235. Week 3, Matt Ryan had 286 before he left the game in the third quarter.
Yeah.
Ben Roethlisberger had 314, and then Drew Brees had 371. So, who knows? Maybe this is the week Joe Flacco is a top 6 or 7 quarterback. So I think that's a pretty good prediction.
I'll take it.
Is our cutoff for the high? Is that 20 points for quarterbacks?
I think so. Yeah.
Sure. Why not?
Okay.
I think for a guy like Flacco, 20 points is. I think if you put, if I put Peyton Manning out there, you'd probably want to go a little higher. But
against
I think
the Jets, 45 points is your
right. Exactly.
I'm gonna disagree then because he's only gotten above 20 points once this year, so I'm just gonna play the odds on this one. And disagree and say he gets under that. Right. Joe, let's go into your highs for the week.
Yeah, my highs this week. I have 2 guys playing in the same game. I have running back Matt Forte. Atlanta has been terrible against the run this year. They've given up more than 100 yards rushing in 4 of the 5 games to opposing teams. I also just think Forte is getting a lot more opportunities out of the backfield to catch the ball right now. I looked at his numbers. Obviously, this isn't going to keep up this way, but he's currently on pace for over 100 receptions this year through the 5 games that he's played. So
pretty good.
Yeah, it is. So obviously, PPR, the guy's a stud. He may be the best running back in football when it comes to PPR. But I think in all formats, I think he could be the number 1 rusher this week against Atlanta. And my other guy, I have the quarterback for the other team, Atlanta's quarterback Matt Ryan, playing at home against the Bears defense. They've been awful against the pass, and they've allowed they even allowed over 300 yards passing to Geno Smith. I think Matt Ryan is going to have his way. I'm kind of hoping this game is a shootout because there's a lot of good fantasy guys with all the receivers involved as well. But I just think both of these guys, I think pretty much if you've got a guy on either team, you have a chance for some good points this weekend. So, Steve, we'll start with you. What do you think of my highs, Matt Forte and Matt Ryan?
Yeah, I like the Matt Forte pick. Matt Forte has been hot. The entire Bears offense is clicking a bit right now, so I like the Matt Forte pick for sure. I think that he could be top 3 running back. I guess it's kind of the next level echelon type because you're going to start Matt Forte anyway, but I think you can start him with confidence and think that you can expect close to 20 points from him this week, so I like that pick for sure. And then Matt Ryan, like you said, they're playing at home, so I like that. And with the Bears defense being poor against the pass and all that stuff, if you give up 300 yards to Geno Smith, you're giving up 300 yards to everybody. So
right.
I think Matt Ryan, he definitely has a chance. And I guess what I'm saying is what you were saying is that I think you've got a shootout on our hands, and it could be a fun game to watch. So if you have anybody from this game, I think Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey and Julio Jones and even Roddy White, they all fall in this category where if you have somebody from this game, you got a good shot to get some good point totals here.
Yeah, I agree. Really not much else to add. I mean, you can't, argue that. I mean, Matt Forte, other than DeMarco Murray, might be the best running back in the league right now, as far as fantasy-wise.
Fantasy-wise, yeah.
Yeah. And then with Matt Ryan, I mean, he's kind of he seems to be having a slightly up and down year. 1 week he'll score 30 points like he did at home against the Saints. The next week he'll score 13 points like he did against the Bengals. But, yeah, I mean, he's definitely a better player at home. If you look, he played Tampa Bay in week 3 at home, scored over 20 again. Week 4, I think he was on the road, so, I mean, he still had a good game. And then last week they lost in New York. But he's back home now, so I agree. I think he's going to have another great game. I'd probably put him in the 20, probably about the 25-point range you can expect from him, I would think. Let's move on to this week's low list then. Recap last week's low list. I'll start off. I had Trent Richardson. Almost felt like cheating or stealing candy from a baby or something like that. 9 rushes for 37 yards. 4 catches on 5 targets for 10 yards for 4.7 points. He's at the Texans, Thursday night game this week. Now, normally Thursday night games are running back heavy games, so does his value boost for you at all this week for Trent Richardson? Joe, we'll start with you.
Maybe a little bit, but I think if I'm starting a running back from Indianapolis, I right now I'd much rather have Bradshaw as long as he's healthy. I just think that guy, Bradshaw, is the guy that's getting the most work done. I think Trent's doing okay, but maybe if you're hurting at running back, if you're someone like me in one league where I have Jamal Charles on a bye, Rashad Jennings is hurt, and half of my team are on byes or hurt, maybe he fits in your lineup, but I think there's a couple other guys I'd rather have ahead of him, including the guy on his own team.
Steve, you
Yeah, I'll echo that point. Yeah, no thanks. I think I'd rather have somebody like Ronnie Hillman even, who hasn't even played or hasn't even had a starter's role yet. Trent Richardson, I'm just done with at this point, and he's really unimpressive. He's kind of fallen in the Toby Gerhart class for me, where it's just disappointing that you drafted him that high and expected something out of him because you're not getting anything.
And you just know his ceiling. You know what Trent Richardson's going to give you every week. And you don't know right now what Ronnie Hillman's going to give you. So, I mean, it's a gamble, but I don't disagree.
Yeah, take a shot.
Next up, I had C.J. Spiller, 10 rushes on 8 yards, 3 catches on 4 targets for 25 yards. He had 3.3 points. Terrible outing. Plays the Patriots. Not fantastic against the run. So how do you guys feel about Spiller this week? Joe, we'll start with you.
I think I'm really starting to come on board with Steve's, I forget, what is the club that you have C.J. Spiller in?
I think I just called it the I Give Up Club.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen between him and Fred Jackson and who to start and who's going to be the better guy. So, yeah, unfortunately you may be in a situation, however, where you drafted him, he's still in your lineups, and with the amount of, like I said this earlier, with the amount of injuries and bye weeks and things are going on, you may not have a choice. So because the matchup isn't terrible, sure, keep him in, but I don't feel very confident going in knowing that C.J. Spiller is going to actually perform.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've been saying it pretty much all year. I started this I Give Up or I Quit Club or whatever it was. I'm just done guessing with them, so I guess that means you play the matchup. And the 11th, it looks like right here the Patriots are giving up the 11th most fantasy points to running backs this year. So the matchup is fine, but I don't know that your frustration will ever stop with having CJ Spiller and putting him in and not knowing to expect from him.
Yeah, I totally am on board with the I give up club. I mean, I would rather, I know more of what I'm getting out of like Bishop Sankey right now than I'm getting out of CJ Spiller and Fred Jackson. Not that I would start him over either one, but I'd be more excited about where Sankey can go than where either of them can go. I mean, I'd be starting Ivory over either of those right now. I mean, it's just, you really don't know. So I agree. Steve, let's recap your guys.
Sure, absolutely. I hit on both just like Adam did. My first was Alfred Morris, who had 13 carries for 29 yards, a solid yard per carry of just over 2. And he also did the wonderful thing of having one catch for -2 yards, so he hurt himself even more there. So I hit on a low, and this week he's got the Cardinals. So the way I see it is more good luck against them, but what do you guys see as far as what he can produce this week for Alfred Morris?
Yeah, I think he's probably in for another relatively difficult week. Not as bad, though. Joe kind of said it last week, if they want a chance to win, they're probably going to have to look to Alfred Morris a little bit. So I think, it's kind of weird because this Redskins team gets down a lot in games, and that doesn't help him at all. You see him have 13 rushes. That seems to me like it's been kind of how he's been going this year. I mean, he hasn't been getting a ton of rush attempts, and that's not something you like to see out of your probably number 1 or 2 running back.
Yeah, I agree. I think anyone, obviously you guys said when you play Seattle, it's going to be tough to begin with, but I think for the most part he is a steady running back, and I think he gets back on track. I don't know if he's going to be a top 10 guy this week, but I say at no worse he's a running back 2 against the Cardinals this week, so I think you should feel a lot better. Even though it's still not a great matchup, a lot better than what you had last week. Yeah,
I'm not benching him. But yeah, he had 2 games over 20 carries this year, 22 and 23. The rest were 14, 13, and 12.
Yeah, that's not enough carries.
No.
Yeah. Roy Halou outscored him as far as fantasy is concerned last week, too. So might have somebody to have on your radar if you have Alfred Morris.
Yeah, and just with Morris, he's not, he needs those rush attempts. He's not getting catches.
For sure.
I mean, that just not having that there hurts a lot. So, but yeah, I think he has another mediocre week this week, but ride through it. He'll be fine.
Yeah, sure. And then my other guy, I had Alex Smith, who threw for 179 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. He had 1 carry for 6 yards as well, for a total of 14.6, but that still counts as a green for a quarterback, because if you have a quarterback, you're hoping for certainly more than 15 points. So he's actually on a bye week this week, so we don't have much to talk about, other than I think at this point you can drop Alex Smith because you probably only had him for if your quarterback was on a bye week. So go get somebody who will be more productive and more useful for your team.
Teddy Bridgewater.
Sure, yeah.
Blake
whatever.
Bortles.
Bortles, yeah. Stash Bortles. Even if you're going to redraft league, stash Bortles. Joe, let's recap your lows. Who'd you have this week?
I'm patting myself on the back right now because of all of the lows, my first one actually scored the least points of anybody. So
wonder why.
Now, granted, he got injured pretty early, Monty Ball, but only 1.8 points, 6 rushes, 7 yards, 2 receptions for 11 yards. So unfortunately, he got hurt, so we really don't count that.
Right, but he was not running well. 6 rushes for 7 yards. No, he wasn't. So.
If he would have continued, I probably would have gotten the green light on that. But he's out this week, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the running back situation in Denver later. So I'll leave that for them. My other guys, I had Darren Sproles. I really thought last week was going to be the week that LaShawn McCoy really went off, and he did better. I wouldn't say he went off, but
nobody went off.
McCoy, if it wasn't for McCoy's 1 big run too, those numbers are a little inflated. 7 rushes, 51 yards, 5.1 points isn't bad, but he really only had that 1 big run, and he was really ineffective the rest of the game. So against the Giants this week, I don't know what you guys think. The way I look at it, I still don't really know when to think he's going to hit a big one. I think he's going to be one of those guys where when he hits big, it's great, but you're not going to know what game that's going to be to put him in your lineup. Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I had mentioned last week that I'd be okay starting him in a deeper PPR league. He didn't have a single catch, so I mean, that didn't even help. Usually, the guy gets a few catches, so I think that's more of an oddity than, what's normally going to happen. So I stick with that. If it's a 12, 14, the 14, 16 PPR with the flex, I'm okay. 12, depending who else is on my roster, I'd probably rather put a different receiver in there. But, I know you and I had that Twitter bet, Joe, with Eddie Royal, and Eddie Royal didn't do that much better, but he at least had a couple catches.
Yeah, he did. And, I was more, when I spoke about Eddie Royal, although we did bet about this week, I really meant long-term. I still think, even though Eddie Royal only had a couple points last week, I think long-term he's still going to be
give me Sproles all day for the year then.
Well, I meant from now going forward.
Yeah, sure.
You may be right.
In a PPR?
No, not PPR. That doesn't, no.
Yeah, see, I'm talking PPR.
Okay, well. I think you should specify that next time.
I did, but Steve, go ahead.
All right.
I actually, I'm going to talk about LaShawn McCoy a little bit later, but I'm kind of falling in the same camp, I think, as Joe did last week, where I think McCoy is the guy moving forward. The tension's building a little bit that he's not getting enough carries, and the offense isn't really moving as well as it should, and you could correlate that to LaShawn McCoy not getting enough touches. So as a result, Darren Sproles doesn't get as many touches. So I see a bit of a dip for Sproles heading forward as well.
All right, well, let's move on to this week's lows. I'll start out. I have Tony Romo in Seattle. Again, this feels kind of cheap, but Seattle's actually giving up decent amount of points to quarterbacks. But they're a totally different defense playing at home, and this has all the makings for me for a Romo 2 to 3 turnover game. I actually really like Seattle's defense this week. They haven't been doing well this season, but I think if you have Seattle's defense, hang on to them for a little bit. They're almost droppable at this point, but see how they do this week. I think they attack Romo, and you very well may see DeMarco Murray fumble yet again. But
for the 6th week in a row.
Yeah, I don't like Tony Romo at all this week. I mean, I know he had a pretty good week past couple of weeks, but not a fan this week. Next up, I got Jordy Nelson at Miami. Steve's going to hate me for this, but Dolphins had the 5th fewest to wide receivers this year. Jordy can be a little touchdown dependent, and Randall Cobb's kind of the same way. Granted, they do have Aaron Rodgers throwing it to them, but last year he only had 5 games with over 100 yards the entire season. I think Green Bay is going to look to attack Miami on the ground a little bit more this week. So, if you told me Jordy Nelson still is going to, and you're not benching him, but if you told me he's still going to have, a good game, I wouldn't be entirely surprised, but I think it depends on if he catches 1 to 2 touchdowns, which, he very well could, as he's done in the past. So, Joe, we'll start with you, and then we'll roll into Steve and his picks. Joe, how do you feel about Romo and Jordy?
Yeah, I think Romo actually could have a pretty good day against Seattle, but it's going to be tough. I think they're going to be the defensive backs in Seattle are going to be excited to play against the wide receivers in Dallas, but I can understand why you picked that. There's a ton of other wide quarterbacks that I'd rather start over Tony Romo, so I like that pick. The Jordy Nelson thing, I don't think I could disagree more. I don't understand how you think he's touchdown dependent. Maybe last year, but this year, the guy's got the most targets in the entire league right now, and if I'm not mistaken, he may even have the most receptions up to this point. I'd have to look that up, but I think that Aaron Rodgers looks his way all the time until they get to the red zone. When they get to the red zone, that becomes Randall Cobb's bread and butter. I actually, for the Fantasy Pros website, Randall Cobb is one of the guys that I write for. We all split. Randall Cobb's one of the guys I'm in charge of writing for. And I just wrote a stat the other day. I think he's got 6 touchdowns. He leads the league, and in 5 of his 6 touchdowns have all been within the red zone, and his 6th touchdown was from 22 yards out. So, I think that's touchdown dependent when he's getting 30 to 40 yards a week and then a touchdown. I think Jordy Nelson, obviously you're right. You're never benching him no matter what. But I don't agree that he's touchdown dependent, and I don't see any reason why he doesn't have a good game in Miami. Steve?
I like you said, I think Tony Romo is an easy one. I don't have any issue. I have Tony Romo 17th in the quarterback rankings that I've done this week. So when you said there's plenty of quarterbacks you'd rather play, that's certainly true for me. I have guys like Brady and Dalton, and I even have Carson Palmer in front of him. I'm not sure if Carson Palmer is going to play this week. So, but if he does, I'm going to put Carson Palmer instead of Tony Romo, which is probably somebody you can go ahead and get off the free agent wire if you have Tony Romo and have him penciled into play. So I completely agree with Tony Romo. You said that I was going to disagree with Jordy Nelson, and you're right, obviously, because I have Jordy Nelson and I love Jordy Nelson. But Joe is the Packers correspondent, so Joe makes all my points for me as far as it goes for Packers. But Long live Jordy Nelson. I'll roll right into my lows. My first guy is Andre Johnson, who at this point, I kind of think he's getting by on his name. That it's Andre. If you put, you did that imaginary A versus B thing where this receiver's A and this receiver's B, and I didn't do that. I actually probably should have done that now that I'm thinking about it. Andre Johnson, I think he's just getting by on his name, and he's getting played. He hasn't done much of anything all year. He has 0 touchdowns still through 5 weeks this year. They're playing on Thursday night. Thursday night games are wonky. I believe that the point margin is 30 points as an average for the winning team. They beat the losers by 30 points on Thursday. I think the Texans are in line to be that team that gets blown out this week. They're playing the Colts, even though they're at home, which could be good for the pass, but Andre Johnson just hasn't produced, and he hasn't impressed me, so I'm not really excited about playing Andre Johnson at all this week. And then my second guy is the Broncos running back. I just took all of them because there's 3 of them at this point. It's kind of a carousel. They're playing at Tennessee. If you're going to play somebody, it's going to be Hillman, but I wouldn't start any of them right now just because of the unsurety. And Peyton Manning's going to go ahead and trust himself more than he trusts any backup running back. So I think they're gonna kill the Jets. That's just what it is. The Jets are going to get embarrassed this week, despite what Rex Ryan said. And but they're going to pass it a lot to get those points. Even when they're ahead, I think they're going to throw those short passes that Peyton Manning likes to throw. And I wouldn't start any of the Broncos running backs just because of unsurety. So I'm going to go with Adam first, and then Joe can roll into his lows. What do you think, Adam?
Andre Johnson, I agree that he's on a low, even though now that we finally put him on a low list, he'll probably have a good game because he just does the opposite of whatever we say he's going to do.
Yeah, that's about right.
But I actually kind of disagree about how the game's going to go, but that's kind of a different type of thing. I think it's actually going to be kind of closer, but I think it's going to be Arian Foster for that team all night. I mean, they rely so heavily on him, and Ryan Fitzpatrick's not that great. So I still agree that Andre Johnson's probably not going to have a good game. Moving on to the Broncos running backs in New York. New York, other than with Brandon Oliver last week, is pretty good against running backs. And I honestly, if I can afford to, I wouldn't play any of them just for the sheer fact that I have no clue what's going to happen here. I mean, same boat as you. I would guess Hillman is the guy. I would actually think C.J. Anderson would be the second guy over Juwan Thompson. I know Juwan Thompson's getting a lot of talk. He actually tweaked his knee as well last week, so I mean, just that could spell more carries for C.J. Anderson right there, even though Anderson was a healthy scratch last week. But unfortunately, though, you might have to start Ronnie Hillman. If you have Monte Ball and you got somebody on a bye, or you have like Bishop Sankey, I'd rather start Hillman over Sankey. So, I mean, you might be kind of pigeonholed into starting Hillman is the only issue there, but I wouldn't expect much from him. So, Joe, we'll go with you.
Yeah, it's funny. You said the same thing I was going to say with Andre Johnson. Is I refuse to put him on any of my lists because it just never works out the way we say it. So I figured the only list I would put him on right now is the low list, but as soon as I put him there, he's going to have his game. So everything you guys said, I agree with of how bad he's been, but I wouldn't put him on that list because he's going to make Steve look stupid this weekend. I think that's the way it's going to happen, just because I put him on a list. Yeah,
we'll know tomorrow. So
yeah, and I also I'll talk a little bit in my in my don't buy the hype. I agree with the running backs from Denver. So I'll just go right into mine. Yeah, foreshadowing. How about that? So my lows this week, I have Matthew Stafford. He does have a pretty good matchup against Minnesota, but I think anytime Calvin Johnson is not in the lineup, that entire offense struggles. And I think it looks like Megatron's probably going to be out of the lineup. Or if he does somehow jump in there and play, as Adam said earlier, I think he's going to be more of a decoy. And so I think with Bridgewater coming in, who looked good in his only start this year, I think this is a sneaky game that Minnesota could actually win this game. So I have him on a low, and then I put Bishop Sankey on there, and I don't care that he's playing Jacksonville. I'm tired of waiting for this guy to produce. I don't care about his fancy footwork anymore. Until he does it, Adam, you said earlier you'd be more excited about him. I don't disagree, however. I just don't know if his Ken Wisenhunt's ever going to put him in the game to get enough carry. So until he proves me wrong, I'm not going to ever be high on him.
This could be
Adam,
the week.
What do you think?
You don't know. This could be the week.
Could be, and I'll be happy for it because I've been waiting for this guy to break out all season.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, with Stafford, I agree. If there's no Megatron, he struggles. And, Minnesota's defense isn't that bad. So I agree there. I mean, Stafford's he had him and Calvin Johnson both. You saw the huge game one they had on the first week. And they've kind of both, Megatron's been hurt. So, and that directly affects Stafford. So as good of as, Golden Tate could have 7 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown, which is a great week for him, and Matthew Stafford could have 150 passing yards with a touchdown and a pick. You know what I mean? So, just because Golden Tate's going to have a good week, like we said before, doesn't mean Matthew Stafford necessarily will. And with Sankey, I'm not going to put him on any list ever, just because there's going to be a week eventually sometime here where he gets like 15 carries for, a good amount of yards and a touchdown or something like that. So I'm not going to agree, but I'm not going to disagree. I'm going to stay neutral on him right now. But I do think though, if there is going to be a week that he kind of has a good game, it's this week.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think I'm just tired of waiting. So Steve, what do you think?
As far as Stafford goes, I have him 9th on the quarterback list this week. So I think that's I guess that's average for Stafford, but it could be a little bit below average. So you certainly have good points with if Calvin Johnson doesn't play, then that could be with all the struggles that he needs to be on a low list. So, and they're playing outside, not inside now in Minnesota, remember? So they have a chance to, it could be cold or whatever. I don't know when it gets cold in Minnesota, but I assume it's really early. So.
April?
yeah, but that's about right. So it could be a run first game as far as that goes, and like you said, without Calvin Johnson, that could be tough. As far as Sankey goes, I think I'm kind of in Adam's camp here, where this could be the week that he breaks out just because they're playing Jacksonville. Not necessarily because it'll be a blowout, because I think Jacksonville actually has a chance to win this game.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think that they could find a balance here, especially if Locker doesn't play. That Sankey could be relied on a little bit here, and that could turn into some points for him. So I think this has the makings of a yellow all over it. So we'll see what happens.
And I don't disagree with either of you. It's just I know firsthand that I don't know, but I can only assume Bishop Sankey probably listens to this podcast.
Yeah,
so this is basically a challenge to him. I'm putting you on my low list so that you'll finally perform. So.
Yeah, I think he's on your low list strictly out of frustration, just because you need to use him somewhere.
There's no doubt out of it. It's out of frustration. I would not be surprised, especially with his matchup, if he goes off this week.
Yeah.
But until I see it, I'm not putting him on any high list.
And Sean Green was limited in practice Wednesday, so maybe he's gonna miss the game. Probably not. That won't happen. But
show me.
Hey there, this is Jimmy Simpson, star of Half the Content on Netflix, and you are listening to Next Level Radio.
Thanks for listening to Primetime Fantasy Football. Send your questions into primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com. primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com. And make sure to check out our weekly rankings, nextlevelradioonline.com, and go to the Primetime Fantasy Football tab. We'll post the link on Twitter and Facebook at NXT Level Radio or facebook.com/nextlevelradioonline.
He was a no one, a 0-0. Now he's a hunter. He's a hero.
Prime time. Fantasy football's 0 to hero.
0 to hero, just like that.
all right, to recap last week's 0 to hero, all our highs and 0 to heroes we did not do so well on. But let me tell you this, all our lows and don't buy the hypes we did great on, so you figure that one out.
Great.
I had Nick Foles. I think maybe it was a little wishful thinking here. Threw for 207 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick, 2 rushes, 13 yards, and a lost fumble. If he didn't lose that fumble, which was an ugly fumble and a stupid fumble,
That was the worst.
he would have been a yellow probably, but he had 14.58 points. He plays the Giants this week. Maybe we can talk about it a little bit as far as, I guess we'll start with Steve because he has the quarterback ranking. Steve, how do you view Foles? If I'm a Foles owner, I'm pretty worried right now.
Yeah, I certainly am. He's a fringe quarterback one at this point. I think he may. I don't foresee him being any more than that moving forward. If you had Nick Foles or if you drafted Cam Newton, those are kind of the two guys that you're like, well, I certainly expected more than this. Nobody expected 27-2, right? But as far as touchdowns, interceptions,
right,
because that's what he did last year. But I don't think anybody expected this kind of a regression. So it's certainly frustrating at this point to have Nick Foles. As far as this week goes, I mean, he's got an okay matchup against the Giants. They're right in the middle of the pack as far as points they give up against quarterbacks. Like I said, I have Maloa in QB1, have him ranked at 11. But there certainly are other guys that you might want to take a shot on. And certainly moving forward, there's guys that you could take a shot on and have a better team moving forward than Nick Foles.
Spoiler alert, we have one of those and take your pick. So.
And we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys with what you said. I'm really starting to get nervous about Foles. Each week that has gone by, I just kept thinking, well, it'll happen next week. And he's missing targets. I don't know if that Washington game beat him up so much that he's just scared to step up in the pocket. But week in and week out, I'm going. Each week, I should say, I'm losing a little bit more confidence in Nick Foles as the starting quarterback for the Eagles. So hopefully, we can get it back on track in a big Sunday night game. But as you noticed, none of us put him in our high list this week. So.
Yeah.
So I'll go on to me real quick. I had LaShawn McCoy on my 0 to hero. I really expected this is the week that they were going to get him involved and really have him shoulder the load. I was right about that, 24 rushes, but he has nowhere to run. I mean, the guy is just dancing behind the line, and I don't have I have not looked online to see if there's any of the footage you can see from the end zone. I'd love to see if there's holes that he's just missing. But I just don't think there's anything there with his line being as beat up as they are. So 0 to here. And you said it earlier, Adam, I think, but if you're the LaShawn McCoy owner, you've got to be worried. If I were the LaShawn McCoy owner, I think there's two things you need to look at. If you have a losing record right now, you may not be able to do much. Or if you have a losing record, I think you need to try to trade him. Maybe he can get you a big receiver and a mid-round or a mid-tier running back. If you're sitting at 4-0 or 3 or 5-0 or 4-1 or even 3-2, maybe you can hold steady. But I am not confident in LaShawn McCoy going forward either. I mean, it's basically the whole Eagles offense. Adam, what do you say?
Yeah, I agree. He just until this offensive line gets it together. I mean, him and Foles, I think it kind of goes hand in hand. Maybe Foles starts improving once the offensive line gets better. Maybe he gets more confidence. But same thing with McCoy. I mean, he had a couple really good looking runs. You're like, oh, maybe he's back, and then he had a bunch of 0 yards, 1 yard, 1 yard, 0. So I mean, it's just not there right now, and the Giants generally have had good run stoppers. It's an okay matchup, but yeah, I mean, you're not benching him, but yeah, you're worried. You're definitely worried.
And Steve, before you go, I'll give credit. I think I heard this on the local talk radio, Philly sports talk radio, The Fanatic. I think it was, I can't remember who, it was Sal Palantonio or Ron Jaworski said that McCoy had 9 carries that went for either no yards or lost yards.
Yeah, that's not good.
He dances a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. So, I mean...
But that's what he does. That's what makes him so good sometimes. But not when the offensive line can't block.
I agree. Yeah, Steve, where are you at on those guys?
Well, I'm actually going to talk about him a little bit later, and it'll probably be within the next 5 to 10 minutes. So that'll be you guys.
Stay tuned.
Yeah,
Stick around.
For my 0 to hero, I actually ended up doing the best, which doesn't say much at all. But I had Rashad Jennings, who had 10 carries for 55 yards. Joe talked about it before he got hurt. And he's at the Eagles this week, but he's also not playing this week. So not much to talk about there. So I believe we could just go ahead and go straight into our 0 to heroes for this week. And Adam, we can start with you.
All right, I got Kelvin Benjamin. I know it's not a great matchup. He's in Cincinnati. But I think he's going to have a bounce back week. I mean, he's had I think 2 not great weeks, and everything else it's been double digits. So I like him this week. He's getting a lot of targets. Cincinnati's 7th least, I think, 8th least to wide receivers. So like I said, not a great matchup. But he's getting plenty of targets. He's getting plenty of end zone looks. He's had some ball control issues, a few drops, but he's made plenty of great catches too. So, I mean, he's had 1.8 points last week. I think you see him get back into the double digits this week. I don't think he's a guy that's going to struggle like that. I think he's going to get double digits more points than not. I'll just say that. And, I'm not going to say he's matchup proof yet, but I do think on bad matchups, he still has that ability to get you, wide receiver, low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 type of points. Joe, let's start with you. How do you feel about Benjamin this week?
I got to hand it to you. You've been big on Benjamin all year, and you're just going to keep on sticking to it, and I think that's good. But I agree with everything you said. I mean, they do have a pretty good defensive backfield, but Julio Jones had some success in Week 2. He had 88 yards and a touchdown. Week 1, Steve Smith Sr. had 118 yards and a touchdown. And the last 2 weeks, they've really faced two teams that are struggling at the wide receiver. With Week 3, Kendall Wright and Justin Hunter really were pedestrian at best. And Julian Edelman led the Patriots with 35 receiving yards for the receivers. So I think actually Benjamin could actually surprise some people and do pretty well this week. So I like that pick.
I think it's bold. I'm not exactly sure. I think Cincinnati's defense is just really good. You calling him not necessarily matchup proof. This is one of the matchups I think that he could actually struggle with because Cincinnati's so good on defense. But I think there's certainly a chance here. I'm just not. I don't know about Hero. That's a 0 to Hero. He's certainly at more than 1.8, I would think. But I'm also just disagreeing with you because I know you're going to disagree with mine because mine is LaShawn McCoy. He's got the Giants. We talked about him, but I'll tell you why I think it's going to happen this week. They have a divisional matchup. They always get up for these Giants-Eagles games. They're always fun to watch, and the stars usually show out in these games. He had 81 yards last week, which encourages me. We talked about that a little bit. I think he goes over 100 this week. And might see that little touchdown dance, that wiggle thing that he does when he scores a touchdown finally. I think with the Eagles at home at night, they're all going to be fired up. I think the Eagles will win at home this week, and I think that Sean McCoy owners could possibly win their fantasy matchups while they're sitting in their home this week. So how badly do you guys disagree with that?
I almost disagree as much with you as I disagree with Adam on Nelson.
That's wonderful.
That's a lot of disagreement.
But this is one of those instances where I really hope I'm wrong. But I just have a bad feeling about Sunday night in general for the Eagles and the entire offense. I just think that when you can look at all the numbers you want, but if you do the eye test, if you look at how the Eagles have been playing the last few weeks compared to how the Giants have been playing the last few weeks, the Giants are the better team right now. I hope you're right. I just don't see it happening with McCoy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty good chance. Like the Eagles are 4-1 right now. Somehow, there's a decent chance that they get exposed this Sunday night. I think the divisional matchup type thing might actually work against them because the Giants know them so well, and Coughlin seems to be able to find out what works against the Eagles. But it is an okay matchup. The Giants, they are I think 6th or 7th most to running back, so he could still have a good game whether or not the rest of the team does. So, I don't know if I see over 100 this week, so, I mean, that's bold on your part as well. Maybe it's just wishful thinking, but, if he goes over 100 and gets a touchdown, all props to you. I don't know that I see that, though.
My 0 to Hero, I picked Brandon Marshall this week. Right now, Atlanta has allowed a 100-yard receiver in 4 out of the 5 games this season. There was talk all last week about his injury, but he looked really healthy during the game. He just didn't really do much with, and I don't believe he had too many targets either. So he's 100%, and against this Atlanta, we talked about it earlier, we really all think it could be a shootout. So I think Brandon Marshall I don't think he's going to have that 3-touchdown game that he had a couple weeks ago. But I really am, I am doing the wide receiver rankings, and they'll be up on the site, like you said, by tomorrow. He's going to be pretty high on my list. I really do think he's going to have over 100 yards and at least a touchdown. Adam.
Yeah, I guess I'll agree, especially because I think Tressman, the coach on Monday, said that he needs more targets. Usually when the coach says something like that, he's going to get more targets. So, yeah, I agree. Steve?
Yeah, he said the magic word of shootout. I think that has all the makings and all the possibilities of being that. And I'm excited about this one because the only week that I haven't played Brandon Marshall is the week he scored 3 touchdowns because he wasn't playing as of 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he played the night game. So I'm excited to actually get Brandon Marshall production out of Brandon Marshall this year because I haven't gotten it yet. So I'm all for it.
All right, well, let's move on to this week's Don't Buy the Hype. Let's recap last week's Don't Buy the Hype. I had Brandon LaFell, 1 catch on 4 targets for 20 yards for 2 points. He's at the Bills this week. I'll give my brief opinion. You can put him in the, I can't guess what he's going to do. It's just going to be one of those things where he'll have a good week and then, he'll have 3 bad weeks. So, Joe, how about you?
I agree. I don't. Other than Julian Edelman and Gronkowski, I'd be nervous to start anyone else in the receiving core for the Patriots.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and agree with both of you. I think LaFell is risky to start. I'm not even sure how many people are starting him. He hasn't brought up that much buzz or anything. So I think there's certainly better options that you can go and get, and there's better options that you probably can start this week with there only being 2 teams on bye. So I think there's better options. And speaking of better options, I didn't know what this guy's last name was, whether it was Donnell or Donnell. He didn't earn the right for me to call him his correct last name last week, but that means I hit on a don't buy the hype because he put a big fat goose egg on the board at the 0. So I'm excited. I'm excited that I got that one right, and I'm excited because he plays for the Giants. But they also, obviously, we talked about it, the game. They play the Eagles this week, who are not good against tight ends and not good against the pass in general. So what do you guys think about Larry Donnell moving forward in Week 6?
Yeah, he could have. You kind of said it last week. He's touchdown dependent. He hasn't had more than 50 yards in a game, and obviously that this past week did not change things because I think 0 is less than 50. Last time I looked. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you're probably going to have to play him. I mean, if you have him, you probably don't have a better option at tight end, so you're probably going to play him. But it's kind of a thing where you hope that he gets a touchdown.
Yeah, I agree. I think Odell Beckham having his presence on the field is going to actually hurt Larry Donnell. So I do. It's tough though. Anytime you've got a pass catcher going against the Eagles, I think it's tough to sit him. So you've probably picked him up if you were pretty high on waivers. And one bad week, I wouldn't just panic. I think if any week he's going to bounce back, it's this week. I hope he doesn't. But yeah, you were good with him last week. And then I had Mike Glennon, who actually played pretty good last week. He was the 13th best quarterback in fantasy. The connection he has with Vincent Jackson is pretty strong. If you look at the numbers going back in the last year, when Mike Glennon was in, that's when Vincent Jackson was at his best. So I think going forward, I'm not saying I would buy the hype on Glennon, but I probably didn't give the credit he deserved. He is facing a tougher matchup this week with the Ravens, but it wouldn't shock me if he was able to put up very similar numbers again, somewhere in that 16, 17, 18 range. I think that's basically what you're going to see from him most weeks, somewhere in that 15 to 20 range. I would not expect over 20 points from him most weeks though. Steve, what do you say?
Yeah, I think that I don't know if they're committed to Mike Glennon as of yet. They're kind of wishy-washy, but they should be. I like Mike Glennon in the way that he plays. Although this week, you said it's a tough matchup with the Ravens and things like that. So I think that I don't know about the matchup this week, but Mike Glennon's not a bad option moving forward if you're either desperate at quarterback or you only have one quarterback who might have a bye coming up. So I think Mike Glennon has some chances to perform for you. I would try to avoid him this week, I think, though.
Yeah, if I'm the Nick Foles owner, I don't have any problem picking him up for next week and then possibly the foreseeable future. I mean, the only thing that would scare me here is that they're not even 100% committed to him as the starter. I think Lovie Smith still wants to hang on to McCown a little bit, but I think they need to just wake up and see that Glennon's the better play here. And obviously, if you're the Vincent Jackson owner, you can be a little more excited now that Glennon is in. But yeah, I don't like him this week necessarily because of the matchup, but I do think he can get you by. And as Joe said, I think he won a league last year with Mike Glennon. So
yeah.
I was second. Unfortunately, I lost with him, but second.
Okay, well then never mind. I don't like him.
Yeah,
all over.
Drop him.
All right, well let's move on to don't buy the hype for this week. I got Austin Davis versus the Niners. Niners defense is not quite as easy as the Eagles. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks put up a lot of points against the Eagles. Niners not so much. Ninth fewest to QB, I believe. He could be a good streaming quarterback down the line, but don't sit him this week. He had 26 points, or don't play him this week. He had 26 points last week. Maybe down the line you can stream Austin Davis and Mike Glennon based on matchup, although this week you wouldn't be able to play either of them because their matchups aren't good. Joe, let's start with you. How do you feel about Austin Davis this week?
Yeah, I agree. This weekend's a tough matchup, so I unless you're extremely desperate in a 20-man league or something like that, you shouldn't be starting him. But
you also should be playing in a 20-man league.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, maybe
Too
not.
much.
I think one of the things people are missing, though, I'm starting to come around a little bit on him, just in the sense, as a streaming quarterback, that is, just in the sense that, if I'm not mistaken, and Steve, you've done the rankings, so maybe you saw this, but I think he's completed over 70 passes in all the games that he started this year. I mean, that's a pretty good statistic for anybody. So I wonder if this guy is actually for real, and I'm anxious to see him going forward for. It's pretty inevitable that there's going to be some injuries happening to the quarterback position eventually, and you're going to have that choice of going after someone like Mike Glennon, your guy Bortles, Bridgewater, or even Austin Davis. And I think his schedule coming up in the next few weeks is really tough. I think he's got Seattle a couple times, San Francisco, Arizona. But I think towards when the fantasy playoffs are starting to come down to it, he actually has some okay matchups. So I'll be at that point, he may be irrelevant, though. But I think right now, over 70%, that's pretty good for anyone.
Yeah, I hear you. And yeah, you mentioned he is efficient, what you mentioned with the completing 70% of passes of what he does. But this week I have him way low on the list as far as quarterbacks go.
As you should.
Yeah, and I would just avoid him this week for sure against the 49ers. Just find somebody that's better. Just as far as the matchups go, because there is plenty of guys this week.
That's the one knock on him. I mean, he's in the NFC West, so he's got 6 games right there against really good defenses. So maybe when he's playing a team not in his own division, you can start him.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly what you could do. Not unlike although Russell Wilson was awesome on the road this week, the old Russell Wilson at home versus on the road thing that you could do.
Although I did tell you to start Russell Wilson over Phillip Rivers. You did not listen.
I did not, and I would have won if I did, so
you're welcome.
You can, shut up. Tim Wright is who I have on my Don't Buy the Hype this week. Had a huge game last week, running that Aaron Hernandez role or whatever they're calling it in New England as the second tight end who also does well with Gronkowski. I'm just not buying into Tim Wright just yet. He has talent, and I think the Patriots probably do like him as a player, but Buffalo is actually pretty good against tight ends, so, I mean, you're not going to sit Gronkowski, obviously. If you have Gronkowski, play Gronkowski, but if you don't have Gronkowski and you're scrambling for a tight end, I think you have a better chance with somebody that's not Tim Wright this week. I think you're overthinking yourself if you're going to start this guy after 1 week of production.
Yeah,
what do you think, Adam?
And he's 20th on your rankings here, and I would agree with that. You and I kind of talked about it a little bit on that waiver show we did on Monday, waiver podcast, the bonus that we did Monday night. He only played on 19 snaps, so good production on the 19 snaps, but 19 is 19. I think they had 85, so he played on not even a quarter of the snaps. So
yeah,
Joe?
Yeah, I agree with everything you both said, and I thought, just to play devil's advocate, I was going to bring up the point that you just said. He played very limited snaps, but he still had, what did you say, 7 targets? I think he had 6 or 7 targets on only the 19 snaps that he played. So
yeah, he was very productive for what he played. But
so yeah, and I don't expect him to get a ton more snaps, but it's interesting because I'm in a dilemma right now where I have Travis Kelce on a bye this week, and I only have 1 tight end, so I'm currently on waivers. The one league where I have that, we do our waivers on a Wednesday night, and my choice is I'm looking at Jordan Reed to see if he comes back, but I'm actually thinking about him just to see that because of how production he was, I'm just going to try to play the lottery and go with him because there's a bunch of other guys on there that I can pretty much guarantee I'm going to get 3 or 4 points from them. But I like the fact that he was so productive in limited carry, or limited touches. So I may go against what you guys said and play Tim Wright this week. But
take a home swing.
But yeah, just for the home run, just the fact that I agree with everything you said. He may not even catch a pass this week. The way of especially the way the Patriots are.
I wouldn't be
one
shocked.
Guy's great 1 week. Yeah, exactly. So, but I think that of all the guys in the waiver wire, I think I like his chances at hitting big best.
Hey, Steve, I think somebody did not listen to the waiver podcast on Monday.
Yeah, he doesn't listen to the bonus podcast.
No, I must not have heard that.
Well, who are you not buying the hype on this week, Joe?
Ronnie Hillman. For the same reasons Steve had mentioned earlier, I think that he will be the lead running back in Denver, but I think they really are going to go with a committee. But we've been hearing about Hillman for years now. Hillman's always been on the docket every year. Is he going to be the starter? And he never is. He's had his chances and he's never capitalized. And I expect more of the same going forward. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I think for me, he was supposed to be last year, right? And then Peyton Manning decided he couldn't block and he never saw it down, and Knowshon Moreno took the reins. So I don't think it's out of the question that C.J. Anderson does the same thing to him this year. So You said it that I mentioned that I'm not excited about any of them, and I wouldn't play any of them unless I had to, and certainly Ronnie Hillman falls under that category. So I'm gonna go ahead and agree with you for sure on that. Don't buy the hype there.
Listen, to kind of play devil's advocate here, to maybe make
That's what we have 3 people for.
to make an argument for people who defend Ronnie Hillman. First off, Joe, I don't know how you can say every year. This is only his 3rd year. Okay, let's slow down a second. Let's pump the brakes. Okay.
Well,
He is a smaller.
I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. All 3 years.
Okay. He is a smaller running back. He's only 5'10", 195. So that part, it doesn't worry me, but it doesn't excite me. It kind of worries me. It kind of excites me. It excites me because he probably has some good speed on him, but it worries me because he's probably not a great in between the tackles runner, and he's probably not a great blocker. The other thing that would worry me here with him is the reason he kept getting benched was his fumble issues. So if he comes into this game and say he is getting all the carries, and I fully expect him to get the majority, I would say probably like 70% of the carries are going to go to him. But if he comes in here and he's getting all the work and then he fumbles at a key point in the game, forget it, you're done. So that's the part that worries me about him. I haven't seen that he fixed his fumbling issues. So, I'm kind of on the Sankey train there, is that I'm not putting him on any list until I know what the hell's going on, because I really don't. I pretend like I do, but I don't. So let's go to that wraps up for the Don't Buy the Hype 0 to Hero. Let's go into Take Your Pick, probably the most fun segment here. So let's start off with DeMarco Murray. He's been a top 10 running back every week. I think he's been top 5 all but 2 weeks. Seattle hasn't given up more than 38 yards to one running back. So who gets the better here, DeMarco Murray or Seattle defense? Take your pick, Steve.
Yeah, I actually was going to put DeMarco Murray on my low list, but then, I don't know, we try to kind of have guys that are on the fringe of starting or not starting, and you're going to put DeMarco Murray in regardless. But I was going to have him on my low list this week, so I'm certainly counting the Seattle defense as winning this matchup in Seattle and all that good stuff. He could fumble 3 more times and still get 25 carries somehow, but I just don't think that this is the week for DeMarco Murray. But you're going to start him anyway. I just don't think that he's gonna produce like he has before.
Joe?
Yeah, I agree. I would take Seattle in this matchup.
Well, I thought somebody was going to take DeMarco. I was going to take Seattle as well. So, who has a better fantasy day, Eli Manning or Nick Foles Sunday night? Steve.
If you asked me this question 7 weeks ago, I would have called you a damn idiot. And now the answer is Eli Manning. It's ridiculous as far as the up and down of the football season, I guess. But the answer is Eli Manning. I'll give you the number on my rankings. I have Eli Manning 8 and Nick Foles 11. I think that Eli Manning is just Joe kind of said it earlier that the Giants are playing better right now. So Eli Manning is probably going to have a better day Sunday night, a better night.
Joe?
I'm just hoping my dad never listens to this podcast when I say this answer. Eli Manning.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
It breaks my heart to say it. It's just the offensive clicking, and now they got Beckham Jr. is looking good. I want Nick Foles to prove me wrong, but every single week he's overthrowing guys. He's just not looking confident and strong, and they're still finding ways to win, which is great. I'm taking Eli Manning.
Yeah, I'm going to agree too. Same thing with Steve. If you asked me this question at the beginning of the year, you'd be like, are you kidding me?
Right, it's ridiculous. That's what it is.
Now, he couldn't complete a pass for 10 yards in all 4 preseason games.
Yeah, now, unfortunately, the answer is Eli Manning. Now, that could change going forward, but this week, definitely, Eli Manning's probably going to throw for 3 touchdowns against that defense. All right, let's get on to our favorite parts. First off, we'll start with running back roulette. Take your pick, Lamar Miller versus the Packers or Ahmad Bradshaw at Houston on Thursday night. Joe?
Bradshaw.
Lamar Miller.
Oh, God. I'm going Bradshaw. Doug
No.
Martin versus Baltimore or Reggie Bush at Minnesota?
Never Doug Martin.
I don't. Is Reggie Bush going to play this weekend?
I think that he said it's not a big deal, but he's the one saying that, not his coaches. So. All
right. Well, whether he plays or not, I'll take Reggie Bush.
I'm going Doug Martin.
Whether he plays or not, Reggie Bush.
He's going to get more points than Martin. Martin will just have 1 yard with a fumble.
Martin will have a negative
points.
1 point. Yeah, Reggie Bush will win.
CJ Spiller versus New England or Matt Asiata versus Detroit. Tough matchup. Joe?
Matt Asiata, I think he's going to get enough of the carries to at least do something where I just can't guarantee that with CJ Spiller.
Steve?
I will never choose anyone from the I Quit Club and just take a pick, so Asiata.
I'm going to take Spiller. I just think the matchup is too much for Asiata. Frank Gore.
I think real quick. I think Spiller definitely has the higher ceiling. I just think
Asiata's safer.
Asiata has a lower floor.
Yeah, he's a safer pick. Frank Gore at St. Louis or Brandon Oliver at Oakland? Joe.
If Donald Brown is 100% out, Brandon Oliver. If he does play Frank Gore.
Steve?
I like Frank Gore regardless.
I like Oliver regardless. Ben Tate versus Pittsburgh or Andre Williams at Philadelphia? Joe.
Oh, man. I'm going to go Ben Tate, actually.
I'm going to go Tate as well.
So I guess we'll go the trifecta on that. I'll take Tate. All right, let's move on to wide receiver roulette. Who put these on here? I think it was Steve, right? Steve, you want to take over here?
I did, yeah. All right, so we'll start with Steve Smith Sr., who is playing at Tampa Bay, or Victor Cruz, who is playing at the Eagles.
Cruz.
Give me Smith.
Yeah, buddy. 89, bottom line. Next one, we're going to go Roddy White, who's playing at home against Chicago, and Percy Harvin, who had 3 touchdowns taken away last week, who's playing at home against Dallas.
Let me just say something. I lost a game because of that damn foolery. 3 touchdowns taken away, and Marshawn Lynch gets some stupid touchdown towards the end of the game, and I lose.
And 2 of them were on consecutive plays.
Yeah, consecutive rushing plays, weren't they?
Yeah, I think one was a swing pass.
Was one? Okay. I'm gonna take Roddy White because Percy Harvin apparently is just gonna keep getting shit taken away from him.
I'm gonna take Percy Harvin.
I think I'm going to take Percy Harvin as well, just because of the dual threat that he has, and they're using him better now. So next one is going to be DeAndre Hopkins, who is also at home against Indianapolis,
which is in Indiana.
Or the Bull Wallace, who is playing at home against Green Bay. That's Mike Wallace for those people who don't watch The Wire.
Give me Wallace. DeAndre on a Thursday night. I don't think Fitzpatrick's going to have a lot of success.
Yeah, I think. I don't care. I'm going to take DeAndre Hopkins. The guy's just been really good this year, so I'm going to go with him.
Yeah, I like DeAndre Hopkins, but not on a Thursday night. So I think I mean at this point, Thursday night games are making my decisions for me, unfortunately, which might not be the best advice. But I'm going to take Mike Wallace because of the Thursday night game.
Well, yeah, you don't want to be on the opposite end of one of those blowouts.
Yeah, exactly. The next one is Keenan Allen, who's playing at Oakland, and Crabtree, who is playing at St. Louis.
Give me Keenan Allen. I just don't like Crabtree.
I feel like Keenan Allen has to perform one of these weeks, so give me Keenan Allen.
I'm going to take Keenan Allen as well. Crabtree was really bad last week, too. He's
still hurt.
Under the radar bad.
I think he's still hurt.
Yeah. And then finally, we'll wrap up with Justin Hunter, who was really good last week at home against Jacksonville, or Cordero Patterson, who is at home against Detroit.
Give me Hunter. I don't like Patterson. To me, is on the Crabtree train. Yeah, I just can't trust him.
Fair enough.
I think Patterson is even worse than Crabtree. Give me Justin. Justin Hunter may only have 20 yards, and I'll still take him.
Yeah, I like Justin Hunter as well. I just think the inconsistency from Patterson is way too frustrating at this point.
No, he's been very you're wrong. He's been very consistent.
Consistently terrible. Yeah.
He's consistently awful.
All right, well, let's move on to a couple Twitter questions we got. Again, remember you can tweet them into us at NXT Level Radio, or tweet any of us at AdamNextLevel, at JoeyWeb32, at SRichards31. Tweet one, tweet all three, whatever. So first up, we got John Hutchings at John Hutch. I believe that's John Hutch II, probably. Looking to trade Alshon Jeffrey for a running back in a PPR league. Who should he target for fair value? Joe, what are your thoughts?
Actually, can we start with Steve on that?
Steve, what are your thoughts?
I actually answered the question on Twitter, and I think that he's got a blank check here. Now that we've talked about it, though, I mean, if Forte's on pace for over 100 catches, nobody's giving up Forte in a PPR league. But I think he's got a chance at taking his pick of the litter, and I think finding the guy who's desperate for a wide receiver but also has a good running back, I think you can really end up with somebody really solid if you have... I mean, I don't know why you're trying to trade Alshon Jeffrey at this point, but if you are, I assume you're struggling at you're good at wide receiver. So I think you can really benefit your team and pick up a game changer type running back going forward.
Yeah, I mean, you might try and find the guy who just has 3 good running backs that'll give somebody up for you. Honestly, in a PPR, it's tough. You'll probably actually be better off targeting a running back who doesn't get a lot of catches because they're more, maybe like a Lynch. He only has 13 catches this year. Maybe a Rashad Jennings, although Rashad Jennings is week to week now with this injury. But if you can get by the next couple weeks, or if you can pick up Andre Williams or find him in there, I wouldn't mind trading him for Rashad Jennings either.
What does Murray look like as far as catches go?
Murray only has 15 also, but he also has the most points in the league, so you're probably not gonna.
That's true. Maybe not in a PPR though.
Yeah, it's true. I'm looking in a standard. So yeah, I mean, I'd probably be more. You'd probably get more response, I guess, or have better luck looking for like a guy, maybe like a Lynch or something, who doesn't get as many catches and is not as valuable in a PPR.
Yeah, I actually agree with that, Adam. But I had a different name in mind. I think Lynch right now is a little too high to go for. I think the 2 guys that came to my mind. One, I think Alfred Morris. I think especially after a poor performance last week. Especially if the Alfred Morris owner may be a little weak at wide receiver.
I said not as many receptions, not 0.
Well, okay. Well, I still say if you're weak at running back, you can try to go after him. The other guy I say go after LaShawn McCoy if you're a believer in him.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, the McCoy owner may just be fed up with him now. And I don't know, to be honest with you, if I even want McCoy. But if you think that especially if you're already doing all right, if your record's pretty good, and you can handle a guy who's going to maybe only get 70 or 80 yards for the next couple weeks, I think McCoy should be your first target.
Yeah, that's
I
actually.
think you might even get McCoy in a throw-in. He might be so frustrated with McCoy because Alshon Jeffrey's been good so far.
McCoy and Cordero Patterson.
Yeah.
By the way,
just drop him.
This is how untradeable DeMarco Murray is. He has 108. This is in a half-point PPR. He has 108.9 points. The next closest guy is Le'Veon Bell with 86.
Oh, never mind that.
He's 20 points above the next guy. So
when he gets hurt, people will catch up.
Yeah, that's true. All right, next up, we got another question from Wes this week at Dub Snipes. Is it illegal to trade for somebody and then trade them back the next week? Your guys' thoughts on that?
The word illegal isn't. I mean, it's not illegal, but I don't know. You might have trouble getting it through the league if it's like voted on by the league. They'll think you're up to some funny business. But I mean, go for it. If it gets voted down, it gets voted down. It's like you're going to get kicked out of the league for it. I think if you can go for it, then go for it. For me,
I disagree. So I in my opinion, now I understand some of the leagues out there just kind of require it depending on the setup and everything. I don't like leagues that have. I shouldn't say I don't like leagues. I don't like the fact that you have veto in leagues because it gives the opportunity for a guy to look at a team or a trade and say, well, that trade hurts me because that guy's better now, so I'm going to veto it. I think, in my personal opinion, vetoes should only be used when there's cheating going on or collusion. So I'm not a fan of any vetoes unless there's known collusion, and I think in this case that's cheating. You're trying to get better for a week, and you're switching with 2 guys that can make you better for the week, and you switch back. That's 2 owners that are just getting together and cheating the rest of the league. I think it is it's a bad thing to do. I think that this should be outlawed immediately.
It is illegal. You're getting arrested for it.
I would say it's illegal. I would call the cops.
illegal.
Yeah, I mean, as a commissioner of 2 leagues, I think, yeah, it's definitely faux pas. I would not allow that in my league. But I think a lot of leagues you kind of have to. If it's a league that you guys have been together, you do this. Everybody's in the league every year. You kind of have to establish those ground rules at somewhere along the way.
Yeah, we in one league where I'm the commissioner, we have like an actual we call it our little committee that if we do think we've known each other since we were young kids, so.
Wow,
if we do think 2 guys are collusion, shut up. If we do think that there is collusion going on, we'll actually vote to veto it. But in the almost 20 years that we've been doing the league, we've never vetoed a trade.
You've been in a fantasy football league for 20 years?
Almost. I think I started in so maybe not 1995 we started.
Holy cow.
We were in 8th grade when we started.
Were you doing it with pencils and paper?
We used to use
an abacus?
We used the Philadelphia Daily News to do our points.
That's awesome.
I'm barely 20 years old.
Yeah.
We should have had Joe on earlier. He should have been the one that started the thing.
Yeah, seriously, guy's been doing the league since you're etching it out on rocks. So let's real quick do this. We decided to this week do a fantasy football team of the week here for those 1 week fantasy league. So this is based on a $60,000 limit. I'll quick run down mine. Joe, quick run down his, and Steve can tell us which one he likes better, and then maybe next week we'll see which one has more points. Quarterback, I took Peyton Manning at the Jets. I just think he's going to have a really good game. He's the highest priced quarterback this week that I saw on there. He's $10,200, but you can get some value at running back and wide receiver, so I think it's okay there. And let me just preface the running backs with, I wouldn't go out and get both like Oliver and Williams, or Oliver and Hillman, or Hillman and Williams. Like, I would not have both of my guys be those like good value guys. Although they're actually priced higher than I thought they would be. But anyway, I have Ben Tate against Pittsburgh for $6,800. Brandon Oliver at Oakland for $6,200. Emmanuel Sanders at the Jets. I just think he gets a lot. And I think they're half-point PPR scoring, something like that.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, he was $8,000. Tate, we talked about earlier, at Minnesota for $6,400. Kelvin Benjamin, kind of getting, hopefully, hoping my high hits or my 0 to hero hits, because he was only $6,600, so I think he can be a good value there. And then tight end, I got Bennett. The tight ends, other than the top like 1 or 2 guys, a lot of other guys are around the same price, so I see no issue going out and getting a guy like Bennett for $5,900. Kickers don't matter, so I took Robbie Gould at Atlanta. It's in a dome, $4,600, and then defense, I took the Cardinals at home against Washington for $53,000. Joe, let's go on to your team.
All right. Well, I led off with Matt Ryan. I just against that Bears defense, I think he can be big. Andre Ellington, he's got Washington this week, and we all saw what Lynch was able to do last week, and so I went with him. I took Andre Williams. I think he's a good bargain against the Eagles. I think he'll do fine. I went with Julio Jones just because he's a stud, and because I saved some money with my running backs, I could afford it. Golden Tate, because I do think Calvin Johnson will be out, and I think his $6,400 price tag is a value right now for that. I went even lower with Mohamed Sanu. Right now, today, if you haven't heard, but A.J. Green was carted off the field. It looks like his toe is acting up. Obviously, this lineup does not have to be submitted till Sunday, so if A.J. Green comes back in, I may look for another receiver, although Sanu has been very good even with A.J. Green in. But if he's out, I'm expecting a lot of targets going his way. I also took a chance with my tight end. Jordan Reed looks like he's on pace to play this week, and he is extremely low. So if he is in the lineup, he's at a really good value at only $5,100. He's so low that my kicker costs more than him. Steven Gostowski actually went for $5,400, and then I took the Titans defense. So I actually have $800 still to play with if I want to trade anything around.
Yeah, you don't have to use all your money, obviously. It's funny, I had Sanu. I did mine. I looked at mine yesterday, so I didn't see the whole AJ Green thing. I did have Sanu, but I had some extra money to play with, so I upgraded to Benjamin. But yeah, I actually, if Green doesn't play, I have no problem sliding Sanu, and that's a great value, $6,000 for him. And obviously, you didn't listen to the bonus podcast because we talked about Sanu on that podcast.
Yeah. He's in my waiver wire in my league that goes tonight. I'm trying to get him tonight.
Yeah, and per NFL Network's Ian Rappaport, AJ Green's status in doubt for Sunday's game. So
I figured that.
Just in a regular league, go out and pick up Sanu if you can, if he's still available.
Sure.
So Steve, take your pick. Who's going to win here?
This is actually really fun because I just went down the list and played the advantage game on who I think you guys have. Who picked the better one? I think so. It's really close too, which is kind of cool. So I have Adam obviously with Peyton Manning. He's just the best quarterback. I have Adam again with Ben Tate over Ellington, and then I have Joe better than Andre Williams and Brandon Oliver. I just like that matchup better. And then I also have Julio Jones is just a stud. He went stud at wide receiver, which is a strategy that certainly could work. You both had Golden Tate as wide receiver too, which probably means he's going to have a good week this week, which is good. I like the Sanu pick, now that we're talking about A.J. Green over Kelvin Benjamin. I think Kelvin Benjamin's matchup is tough as well. Adam just went with more money for tight end, and Jordan Reed's still up in the air a little bit, but I like Bennett's got a good matchup, and we talked about the shootout that could possibly happen there. And that actually made it 3-3 with the one push. And then Robbie Gold went to Penn State, so I went with Adam for the kicker.
Yes.
I spent all my money on a kicker.
You sucker.
And then I also actually like the matchup that Adam picked with the Cardinals at home against Washington. So I went with Adam's team, but I think it's going to be really close. So I don't know if we're going to revisit this next week, but it could be fun to see who ends up winning this thing.
Yeah, I might actually submit this, and we'll see if we can keep track of these guys and see how they do, and we'll figure out who the winner is, and maybe next week the winner can take on Steve then, or something like that.
There you go.
So
I normally like to play a couple $5 or $10 games, but I'll submit this just so that we can have all the points in one of the $50 $1 games. So I normally don't submit these lineups till Friday or Saturday, but I'll submit this exact one so we can have our total points.
Well, we'll allow you to change for Reed if he doesn't play.
Yeah, obviously if Reed's out, I'm gonna trade that. But I have all this extra money now with $800 still on my. But I like the Bennett for $5,900. I'd be able to actually do that. So I would actually maybe switch him in. And I'll be honest with you, I did my lineup before I looked at yours. I didn't want to have yours alter mine. And if I had to pick between the two teams, I actually do. I like your team as well. I think. Peyton Manning. Anytime you have Peyton Manning, you have a chance to do well. So it'll be interesting. But I do think my team could come close.
Yeah, usually, in those type of things, and we don't talk about it much, but in those type of things, you don't want to overspend on a quarterback because, there's usually pretty good value out there. But just the matchup wise, I think this week it's kind of okay to spend a little extra.
Sure.
But okay, so that wraps it up for this week. I don't know if we'll be doing a bonus podcast on Monday. You'll have to follow us on social media to find out whether Steve and I or Steve and Joe and I will be doing that again. But we're definitely going to try and bring you that a few times this year with the Mondays, and we'll also be trying. I know we talked about getting some guys from around the league on. So make sure you check out our rankings. They'll be up Thursday night. nextlevelradioonline.com. You can also find the link on our Twitter at NXT Level Radio, or if you like us on Facebook, facebook.com/nextlevelradio. Also head over to the site or subscribe to Next Level Radio on iTunes for previous shows of the showcast, and then some celebrity guest spotlights that we have on the show or on the podcasts. And then just make sure you subscribe to Primetime Fantasy Football on iTunes as well. Check Steve's blog out, StevenRichards.net. Joe, follow him on Twitter for his Packers stuff. If you're a Packers fan, he is a must follow. And he's at JoeyWebb32. Steve is at SRichards31. I am at AdamNextLevel. I think that about wraps it up. You guys have anything else to add?
No, that's it. Good luck this week.
Yeah, good luck.
All right, cool. So that does it for the Week 6 podcast. We will see you in Week 7.
When I signed that dotted line, it was strange.